Welcome to the Wisdom Check by Tabletop to Keyboard. This is going to be our bi-weekly podcast where we discuss things such as Dungeons and Dragons. Actually, I think maybe we need to turn up my mic a little bit, guys. How about some more gain?
This is the Wisdom Check. This is the intro to end all intros. Talk about Dungeons, Dragons, and
Now, I don't think that's proper. This is a family show after all. This is the intro we can use, fellas. It's good, clean fun for everyone. Welcome to the Wisdom Check, where we have wholesome conversations about the dilemmas we face every day.
Nah, hold on a second. I got your intro right here. Yeah, that's better. Welcome to the Wisdom Check, where I'm right, Jeff's wrong. We're gonna have guests on to talk about it. It's gonna be awesome, because I said so.
He is right. He did say so. I don't know. Is surf music the best music for a podcast about D&D?
Fuck yeah.
Okay.
This just in, nobody can agree on our intro for this podcast. So we're just going to start. Welcome to the Wisdom Check. Roll for initiative. Fuck. A 1. It's like every time.
Everyone, it's Jeff here with the Wisdom Check, and this is a encore presentation of our May 13th, 2019 conversation with Jowzam. If you haven't already seen part 1 of that, go ahead and take a look at it. That's our episode 4 here on the website. And that first conversation we had, we were talking about collaborative storytelling and how much power the players versus the DM should have. And now this topic we're getting into here is pretty cool. Dustin brings up a discussion about how to deploy big, bad, evil guys in your game. And, there's all kinds of things that could potentially go wrong with that. And if you've ever tried it, you know just how complicated that can get. So anyway, if you haven't checked it out already, go check out Jowzam's website, his YouTube, his Twitch, all of his content, cool stuff out there. And hope you're enjoying the Wisdom Checks. I'm enjoying putting it out. We're going to have plenty more episodes after this with many, many, many more guests, and I'm really excited. So if you haven't already, make sure you press that like button, subscribe already, make sure you're available to get all the future Wisdom Check that we all have to offer. And without any further ado, I present to you our conversation.
So one of the things that I put a poll out this week on our Twitter. I don't know if you saw it or voted in it. But we put out a question out there, and this involves, again, how, as a DM, I put plot structure together and how much I let my players drive or not drive, is dealing a lot with, as I said, I'll build NPCs, and eventually some of them will eventually kind of become more of my in-boss material. Mm-hmm. So my skeleton often ends up with a head. Right. I got a head at the end of the skeleton and a tail. You get to start the tail, yeah. You work your way to the head of the skeleton, and then you cut the head off, and the story ends. Probably, it's a lot of times how these things kind of go. Right. So, for me, because I have usually a lot of time to work on games before I get a group of players to play in them, I find myself doing that. And I think that lends more to that DM narrative versus the player narrative, because players, if they start wandering off, you just got to kind of plop down things as in the direction they're headed. Mm-hmm. But you find, now you were kind of saying earlier, you do shorter arcs, so you don't necessarily always have like an end boss, if you will, a bigger bad end guy that you have to worry about.
Yeah, these days it's just I'm doing short little hits on a game. But I have done longer ones in the past, and I've approached it where I've tried to establish them early on, but this was years ago, and I almost forced it on the players. Like, this is your bad guy, so you have to hate him. He's a terrible person. I would do it differently now going forward. And like you were saying, like it's your job as a DM. So inject it and make it part of the story, but don't cram it down their throats, I think is what I would do. Like, leave calling cards and this and that and build the intrigue over time to this person or being or creature or whatever, right? And lead them in that path. Instead of like, this is the bad guy, you have to go after him because that's a story.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky because like a lot of people have a lot of trouble with big bad guys and how to put them in the game. Because like they were used to seeing things in like television or reading books or watching movies where you get all these side scenes where you see the bad guy doing whatever he's doing, talking to his underlings, talking about his plan. In a game, you don't get any of that, unless your players have like scrying or something, or they're sneaking around and watching. But there's always this weird potential for the big bad guy and the players to interact. And I don't know, in games, typically, if your big bad guy isn't just overwhelming, players are just going to gun him down as soon as they can.
Yeah.
Bad guy, jack, he's dead.
Yeah.
So you don't want that. But so like you end up putting the bad guy out there as like multiple levels higher, or he's just, cosmic power or Thanos style. But then if the players still go, bad guy, stab. Oh,
yeah.
Heads are off. Okay, game's over. Good work. Big guy, very successful. Players, not so much.
Yeah, and it's a tough decision as a DM if you do have a character like that you're going to bring into any kind of encounter with the players, even if it's what you think is going to be a purely role play encounter.
Never is.
Like it's a risky thing to decide you're going to do, because again, you kind of built this spine of your story based around this guy or this thing. So, it's a harder thing to lean in there without getting its head cut off. So for me, I find that I have to make him not obvious that he is the big bad end guy. Like he's got to be plotting or scheming. He could even be friendly to the players. Be somebody they meet in a situation where the players do not initially suspect that's who they're dealing with. It's really interesting is that the module Curse of Strahd has you go have dinner with Strahd, I think, at one point. Like you sit down and have dinner with him. And I'm like, how does he get out of that encounter without dying? Like he must just, vampire misform out of there something. Like he's got to, because otherwise, like I don't know how this guy makes it out of this thing in one piece. Like, so like you see these things where there's these situations where you have these guys show up early, and they're written into some of these modules in ways that DMs can do it. So, but I find it's harder to do with mine if I don't just completely disguise him. Oh, I have to lie to my players. That's how I get them out there. Like that's the only thing I've come up with that works is to lie to my players. Like here's this guy. Like in my Raining Bullets game, he was a guy running for mayor, and nobody knew his alter ego was the crime lord of the city that they had been hearing about and doing anything with. He was just a dude trying to be mayor to fix the city, and then they slowly figured out more and more about what was going on in the town. Like, and then oh my god, that's the guy. Like. Mm-hmm. Then they immediately killed him.
Yeah, immediately.
That's how it goes. But that's when it was supposed to happen, so it was okay. Like, it was,
But it's a good way you did it, though. I like the way you introduced him and you made him a known character, but not outwardly bad, right? You had probably had red herrings and this and that along the way. Mm-hmm. So when the reveal happened, it meant something.
Well, most of the bad things they had attributed to his alter ego, they just didn't know it was him.
Okay.
So they just hadn't put two and two together till closer to the end. So, but either way, yeah, it's the same kind of situation. Like you don't, like I said, I basically had to kind of lie to my players about it to a degree, and luckily none of them were like paladins where it was like detect evil. Like
I wouldn't have worked in that game.
Like,
you're like, oh.
Yeah, crime game. Oh, yeah, paladin. No way. Okay. But what's interesting about that style is like it works once, I think. And then a player group is going to start feeling like, oh, yeah, the NPCs betray us every game.
Yeah, you can't do it all the time.
Yeah, I mean,
you gotta have different strategies,
Even the best players are at some point going to be like, yeah, let's just be our own team. Like, are you serving me a beer? You're probably the villain. So it's a little bit delicate on that, I think. I think for me, like the way I like to do it is more of kind of like an organizational structure. So like you're dealing with people who are talking about reporting to X, Y, or Z, or you're seeing like the effects that this person's having in your game world, but not seeing them directly.
Mm-hmm.
And so like maybe the players think that they are dealing with a big bad guy, but then that's like a lieutenant. And then all of a sudden the game world opens up once they realize, no, that's not the top, Yeah. So like
to reveal it like an onion in layers, like, yeah, you always have that. You always have that ability to do that.
So I think it works really well with something like guild bosses or like, I I don't know, like crime organizations in particular, or like
Right.
cults. Anything that's kind of got that layer of obscurity to it.
Right.
It works really well.
And that's very much what I'm doing right now in my Sunday 5e game.
Mhm.
They're dealing with a goblin mafia right now, and so they're moving their way from the underboss to the boss, and then eventually they're going to find out who the power is behind the boss. I got artwork done for it. It's the Godfather, so he's
the Godfather.
he's running things in this town, so it's pretty.
That's great.
That's what they dealt with the hillbilly bullywugs last game that are running the moonshine for the mafia. So, so they slowly get introduced to these things and they start to figure out who the good guys are, who the bad guys are.
It's tricky because the only thing that's a guarantee is that your players are going to be unpredictable, right? So you don't.
Right.
Oh yeah.
It's so tricky. Did you ever see Colville's video where he discussed this? And I thought he did it really well. I'm gonna paraphrase it, but I know I'm gonna paraphrase it wrong. But starts his campaigns off. It's a dark, stormy night. The players start in a tavern or something like that. The door swings open. A figure walks in. Everybody, kind of trembles in fear. He orders a drink, walks out, or this and that. And that guy who just came in and made this scene is your end boss. So they've got like something happens in the bar, or this and that, and he introduces them that way. And I was like, oh, that's a really neat way to do it as well, because you see them, you interact with them right off the bat, there's a connection, something happens, and then they walk off scene and you're like, oh, that's the guy we're going after, and it sets the stakes kind of thing as well, which is an interesting way to do it.
He Sephiroth them.
Yep.
Yeah.
He Sephiroth them. He put him right in there at the beginning, you meet him, and then next thing you know, he's dropping meteors on your world.
Right.
Like it's
Take that, chocobos.
There's so many different ways to do it, and like GMing, there's no right or wrong way, right? There's no catch-all answer, really.
Yeah, and again, like we were talking about before, the collaborative role playing. Sometimes, you're gonna drop out the dude, and you're like, "This is my bad guy," and then we're gonna be like, "It doesn't seem like that bad guy."
Yeah,
like, no, he's not really doing that much interesting stuff. Now that guy was smarmy to me for like 4 seconds. Yeah. Oh, it's go time. We're plotting against this dude.
And that's where I think this topic becomes more important. Is if you want to have one of these things, and according to our poll, now we didn't get like thousands of responses on this poll, but like if you have a bad end guy, like almost 90% of games, according to the poll I put out, have some sort of like end boss. Mm-hmm. So, only 10% mark that they never do it. So when you're talking like a large bulk of the games have this kind of character in some fashion in it, you can't make that guy important if you don't have ways for him to interact. Because you're right, they will pick up on a secondary character that they do get to interact with instead. And then what you're ultimately doing is you're going to end up elevating that guy to some level of boss. Mm-hmm. And to a degree, even though in my Raining Bullets game, that's exactly what happened. A character that they did get a little more interaction with ended up becoming almost as big a deal because of the plot hooks they did grab onto in that game. Mm-hmm. And so they actually killed the big bad end guy and then went and killed that guy. Now they had the option. They could do it either way. I gave them the option. I'm like, you can go to the hospital first and kill the doctor, or you can go save the mayor, which they thought they were saving the mayor. Turns out mayor was the bad guy. They get there and find out. So, they had the option of doing it in either order, and the story would have ended relatively the same either way. Mm-hmm. But I had to elevate that guy to that point. He was supposed to be a sub boss. He ended up becoming basically like big bad end guy 2A. Because he was that integral to the storyline because of the plot hooks they did take and the ones they ignored along the path. Mm-hmm. But that's because they got to interact with him a little more than they did the guy who was basically in hiding. They didn't know they were interacting with. So they didn't have that same emotional connection to this other guy because they didn't know what he was doing.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. And if you hadn't made that switch, they might have felt cheated if you stuck with that old guy, right? Yeah. This guy, we don't care about him.
Yeah, and the other underboss, they just blew his entire shop up because the map I picked happened to have a propane tank in the back of it, and I didn't know anything about it. And they're like, "We like the propane tank." I was like,
"Yep, there you go."
I did not think of that. Okay, well, there was stuff in there I was hoping you were gonna find, but I guess we'll rewrite around this thing. Yeah. Like those are the kind of things that'll happen. Like that was just an underboss. Yeah. Luckily, that wasn't the big bad guy, but it was like, but that's the kind of things that your players will sometimes pick up on and do. They'll think outside that box that you've set.
I know
that was hours of map making, and they just blew it up.
You've thought of every angle, and then that happens. I've had that happen with map. Like, is this really on here? And I'm like, yeah, it's on here. Oh, I'm gonna use this to do that. And I'm like, okay, sure.
Is that random rock giving me cover? Yeah, yes it is.
Sure. How tall is it? 5 feet. Okay.
Well, that happens to synergize in my 6 feet perfectly. I call that exactly 5 feet increments. So thank you. Scud storm.
Exactly.
It's another thing you were touching on a second ago is that the emotional connection between the bosses is important, right? But I also kind of wonder if there are types of things you could throw out, like forces of nature kind of bosses or something. So like, man, it's a hard topic. I was going to use an example of Game of Thrones, but I don't want to ruin it for people who may still be watching. But like those concepts of like slowly moving disaster as opposed to an individual, like, do you feel like those pay off?
Like an impeding blizzard, let's say?
Like
that kind of force of nature, or do you want it more intelligent,
or an army,
like not
like an approaching army, or an actual force of nature, or
like Tarrasque, we'll say. There's a Tarrasque out in the world. Like,
okay, so
is that a proper big bad guy, or does that feel like a monster?
I think that's interesting because we've seen it done.
Yeah.
We've seen in the Tarrasque specifically used as like the end of a game. I think my problem with forces of nature is that they seem very impersonal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you did not interact with the Tarrasque. He woke up.
He interacted with you.
He doesn't even know about you, most likely.
Right.
He's just stepping on you because you're in the way. You got here at the wrong place at the wrong time. Godzilla does not seem to particularly care about the people in the buildings. He's there to fight King Ghidorah, and you're like we said, at what point does a creature get so big that humans are using swarm rules? Like, you're just in the way. You're just the ants. Like, you're, how important is any one individual member of the bee swarm to you? Like, I don't know if you can, I don't know if it can be the same unless there was a plot that led you to the point of trying to stop him from emerging, and then you fail and he emerges, and now you have to like save a city or something from it. Like, maybe then you can make that work.
And they have to also be invested to actually want to save that city or stop that force of nature, right? Because they could also be like, well, forget it. Let's go to the next town. Who cares?
That seems really hard.
There's a lot of towns on this map. We've seen the map.
Right?
It's big. There's a lot of towns. That one can go. It'll be fine.
That's always a struggle, too. Like, that kind of happened with us on Tuesday night. The guy who's running Waterdeep Dragon Heist for us. The beginning, it all hinges on your characters caring about who Volo is. You have to care about who an NPC is and want to work for him. And all of us, like, the characters doing, we're like, we don't care. We don't care who you are. We don't want to take your job. And I could tell that, like, the poor DMs was like, guys, come on. We eventually gave in, but that's a thing, right? Like, do the players even care if a Tarrasque is coming or a force of nature or whatever it is? Like, they have to be emotionally involved, and that's tough, especially for a force of nature. I think there has to be some sort of emotional connection. How do you do that? Do you tie it into an existing one? You almost have to. With something like that, because again, a dragon's coming in 20 days. Okay, peace. Like, we're out.
See, I think that's where a dragon works, where a Tarrasque doesn't.
There's a personality and an intelligence.
Yeah,
because he has such a higher level intellect. You can talk with the dragon. Mm-hmm. The Tarrasque knows zero. He don't even know common. Like, you get nothing out of the Tarrasque. He's just there.
Like you said, it's Godzilla, right?
Yeah. I mean, you could move it to the water. It's the same thing. If we were dealing with Leviathan, he's giant.
I think it's the nature of the fact that there's only one way to interact with it. You fight it. And you fight it a specific way because it's only beatable in a certain way.
Right.
Whereas I think other types of big bad guys, the intelligent personality types, you can negotiate with them. You can, intimidate them. You can outthink them. You can out-strategize them. You can, play on their weaknesses. You can find elements of their personality to exploit. There's something to it. Though, kind of looking at the chat here, it looks like Jay Bruce is saying that he thinks it can work well because it shows the world is bigger than just the party.
Yeah.
Now, I think that's probably true if it's just like, oh, by the way, total party wipe.
Well,
guess what?
Yeah, I got other ways I kind of do that a little bit, and Jeff knows this is one of my biggest pet peeves. I was one of the biggest fans of Final Fantasy VII ever.
Okay.
But the reason why I love Final Fantasy VII the way I did is because I just played it straight through. I did not spend a lot of time on all the extra bullshit missions. Like, I always joke, like, you have this scene with Sephiroth. He uses black materia. He calls down a meteor. It hangs in the sky, and you go off to start a chocobo ranch somewhere for the hell of it for like a year. You're just hanging up there. That meteor ain't coming down until you decide to walk into the stupid Antarctica place or whatever. Then the meteor will finally decide to crash once you've decided to push that story forward. So I hate when games do that. Like, you got force of nature coming. Something's going to happen. Let's wander off on this side plot for a while, guys. Like, let's go play some card games. Like, that annoys the shit out of me. So, like, when I put my things together, like, I usually, like I said, have multiple plot threads kind of running through a story. And my NPCs usually have a fair amount of agenda. And those agendas will come to fruition if something isn't set upon them to halt them in some way, shape, or form. And usually they don't have to be direct player interactions, but things the players should do should then have an effect on that, and they should feel it back and forth. So that's how I make the world seem bigger than just my party in some ways, is that they will achieve goals. And then the players can hear, like, things are getting done or things are happening outside of what they're dealing with directly.
Well, I think that kind of goes back to an earlier topic we were getting in. You're kind of feeling out what your players' expectations are. I think I'm trying to remember where I read this, but there's like a big thing in game design about simulationists, gamists, and narrativists as like the three camps of game design. And so, like, simulationist is more kind of like, I guess Shadowrun's kind of simulationist. Like, guns do what you expect a gun to do. Like, you get shot, you die. Like, it's not fair. It's, it's brutal. Things happen. Deal with it. Whereas other game systems, it's like, hey, no, the story is paramount. Like, let's let the rules kind of stick aside. Let's focus on how this arc is going. And then there's gamist, where it's like, brutality's its thing, the narrative is its thing. Really, the important thing is having fun. It's like, we'll bend, depending on which camp you're in, you bend the other two things to favor this other one. And I'm kind of wondering if that's the case here with the way you interact with the big bad guy, right? Like, if your group is a type, it's like, I expect a simulation, which sounds a little bit like what Dustin's saying, right? Meteor's coming. You don't have time to go forge a sword and go play with some chocobos and, globetrot around and hang out with, Yuffie or whatever.
Right.
Whereas from a game standpoint, you're like, yeah, a player wants to do some stuff, go do it, So, like, there's a little bit of a balance at the table that I think kind of touches back on that collaborative gaming topic that we had at the start.
Yeah, you mean at the beginning of Wisdom Check 1?
Or even this
one? Yeah. I mean, I think that, I think a lot of it is getting your players and your DM kind of on the same page and understanding what your players are wanting out of the game, and you as a DM, what you want out of the game. Because DMing is a very, very selfless thing a lot of times. Like, you're trying to provide fun for a group of guys and trying to still have fun yourself. And so I think as a DM, you have to figure out what is it about DMing you enjoy so that you can make sure you're getting something enjoyable out of it too. Because odds are you're losing.
Oh,
if you like winning, DMing is not for you. You're not going to win. Like, you're not.
Yeah. Well, that's not what it's about, right?
Right. No, but that's what I'm saying. So, like, you have to find other things. Like, you have to enjoy the story. You have to enjoy, like, there's got to be other things in there that you
facilitating a good time for others, right?
Right. Yeah. Like, there's got to be other things in there you enjoy. Yeah. So I think with DMing, a lot of times, like I said this, I think in a previous episode, even, like, they get too attached to their big bad end guy.
Yeah.
Like, this guy's story is my story. I can't have it end. So they power him up, they shelter him, like, so I think that's the pitfall where people have with this concept. And I think that's why you don't see as many forces of nature big bad end guys, because they're not attached to that necessarily. Like, they might be like, oh, that's cool. I've never used a gold dragon before. I'm using it this time though. It's the most powerful big bad end guy I've ever used, right? Like, I think you get a little of that, but ultimately I think that I guess it's just a matter of knowing what your players are going to be into when they get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And then figuring out ways to help drive them there and make sure that you enjoy it, because otherwise games end.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like maybe if you have a dedicated group, like you have dedicated groups, we have dedicated groups here that we use. Like I think when you go around to stream, you see those dedicated groups. But if you're just talking like games, like I'm running right now at the game shop, if these guys just start dicking around and I'm not enjoying it anymore, I'm just not going to show up on a Sunday. And the game will be done. Like,
peace out.
So, yeah, peace out. I'll find some other players, man. Like I got to do this again, So I think that for DMing, like when you're building your games and stuff, like just think about what you're going to enjoy, that you're going to be able to help then allow your players to do their part that they enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
And
Which
figure
is
out how
an
to
interesting question. Like what motivates you to run the game? Like what is it you think you get out of being a game master or DM or whatever?
That is a good question. Yeah. What motivates you, eh? It's tricky, right? It's tough. I personally like to just facilitate, and I want people to have a good time. I also want to try many of the games that are sitting on my shelf that I keep buying. That's one part of it that motivates me, is getting some
the money investment that you already have in.
Right?
You got money on this thing. You got to use it at some point.
When another book arrives in the mail, my wife's like, another one? And you're like, I've played all the ones on the shelf already, honey. So that's part of the motivation. But just facilitating a good time for people. Like, if the players are having fun, I'm having fun. Mm-hmm. That I always find the 2 or 3 hours of whatever we're playing that week just flies by if we're all having a good time, especially the players, because I'm just like, yes, this is, you guys are loving it. I'm having a good time. You're having a good time. We're done already. Like, okay, I can't wait till next week, sort of thing.
Exactly.
Well,
yeah.
What about for you guys? Like, what is it for you then that
I think I'm definitely on that as well. I mean, telling a good story is important, but I think some of it too, we kind of talked on earlier episodes about, what you can explore in a game, like different facets of yourself, you could process different events in your life in kind of a game's format a little bit. There's a kind of a level of separation from it that sometimes it lets you kind of experiment with different social interactions or that sort of thing. And I don't know, I find it's pretty revealing about the other players at the table sometimes. You get to learn something about how they think, how they problem solve, what sorts of things they're attracted to in game, what things that they're just like, nah, could deal without that,
Mm-hmm.
If there are particular scenes that like resonate emotionally with them, it's interesting to me. Like I find that kind of building that kind of connection is really fascinating. But I think most of it though is what you were saying, that kind of facilitating a good time. Like at the end of the day, it's a game.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be doing that.
Yeah, you want to be having fun. I mean, I think that is the most important thing. I think for me, when I decide I want to run a game, I usually start with I think what I get out of DMing more so than playing is like I will build a character for a game, and I'll decide a lot of things about that character, personality wise, stat wise, try to marry all that together into as much as a complete person as I can make him. My current pirate that I'm playing is a wood elf druid. So, I had to do some mental gymnastics to make that seem like that all really belonged in the same place. And so,
right.
I go through those steps of creating that person. And then I play him for a year, 2 years, however long it takes, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm not doing anything else with him. Like, he may grow a bit as a person. He may have things happen to him, and I got to sit down and be like, well, what's he going to do now? I think for DMing, it lets me change hats more.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it lets me really fully expand like everything I have creatively, to put into the world. So I think I like kind of a lot of the world building aspect of it.
Yeah, that's fun.
And I think that part I enjoy a lot. And then, trying to fill it out to a point that when my players get in there, like that they got places that they're interested to go is kind of some of the fulfilling part. Because then once you see them enjoying the things that you've spent the time investing and working on, like then you're like, hey, these guys are liking this. It's going to be fun. Like you go through those steps. And I think that, and then their stories, you never know what their backgrounds are going to be. So then, it's always fun for me to create the hooks that lead from their stories into my main story to hook it all together, to weave it together like and And then eventually their stories and the main story are all one story to a degree, and each other's stories are wound together a bit, and it all just takes them into this one direction sort of eventually before it's all done. Mm-hmm. So I think I enjoy the process of that. And I think doing that often then, helps facilitate more directly the fun most of the time. Sometimes it may not. Sometimes you try it and nothing's just working. But I think most of the time that's what happens.
Yeah, it's fascinating. There's lots of different approaches. And it's something you grow and you learn, and you try different things. And I would say, like over time, I feel like I've definitely changed as a player and as a DM. There's things that motivated me at the start of gaming that I don't enjoy at all anymore. But, like as a young guy, I got started when I was like 5, like the things that motivate a 5-year-old are very different than a 35-year-old,
right.
I don't know, is that something you guys really paid attention to? Kind of like how you've transformed as a DM or a player over your career?
Oh yeah, 100%. Not as much as a player, I don't think, but as a DM, definitely. Especially within the last few years, I've really noticed a transition. And I think that that's a very important trait for a GM, is to be self-aware and to always be growing. Understand that you can learn and change and adapt. Because I don't think anybody does it perfectly. No. And you can keep taking little bits from everybody's bag of tricks and putting it into yours. If you just close your mind and put your blinders on and nope, this is the way I do it and that's the way I run a game, I think you're doing yourself and your group a disservice. Because it's awesome to learn from others and to grow. It's just going to make a better game for your group. Chuck, who was in here earlier, we have a little group that we started called Notorious DMG, and it's just a group of DMs from other channels, other streams, podcasts, and we're running games for each other. He's going to run 40 for us. And another guy, Seth, who has a podcast, the Monday nights, he ran 3.5 for us, or 3rd edition. I'm running Zweihander for them right now. And that exposure to other DMs and GMs and their styles has been awesome. To be as a player in their game and just take bits and pieces from them and see how they run a game.
Do you feel that being a DM makes you a more conscientious player? Because you understand what it's like on the other side of the screen, so you're like, oh man, I know what's going on, so you see the hooks a little better, and you're like, okay, I see what's going on here, so I'm gonna bite where maybe I wouldn't normally, or.
Yes, from time to time, because I also go back to a Waterdeep Heist where I'm just like, no, my character doesn't care. I don't care who Volo is. Take your gold,
even
man.
Though there's a whole book with his name on it, put out by the publisher, so he's important. There's no way you can't know.
Right.
Even more walk into a bar, those guys are going to do something.
Right. Everybody in that world knows who Volo is. But yeah, my character, all of our characters, all 5 of us were like, no, I don't really care. go ask the other guys in the corner, right? So, yeah, I guess yes and no.
Just grabs that entire module and just throws it in the corner.
Yeah, right in the trash.
Yep. Yes, you are more sympathetic to it because eventually, we all kind of came around. But you do pick up on things easier, I think, as well when a DM's putting those little plots and those hooks in front of you, and you're more apt to bite and take them.
Well, and I think also as a DM, you understand writing of a story, writing of a game. You see how the hot dog's made a little bit,
Right.
And so it kind of changes your perspective, I think, as a player a little bit. I'm actually kind of interested in how you're meeting your players. Obviously you found these DMs online, but has that always been the kind of way you've been approaching it, or are you meeting people at gaming stores? How would somebody else find it?
It's all been online. So some of these players, I'll put up on Roll20 if I'm going to run a new game. Before I got kind of a stable of players, which I have now, and I lean back on them, and I've got a bunch of people who have come in on the Discord who are interested in joining games, and I'm kind of bringing more people into the fold. Before that happened, I would just go to Roll20 and I'd post, and I have a hell of a time finding people because I'm running all these games that aren't Pathfinder, D&D, and whatever else is popular. I ran Zweihander either the month after the month of it won Game of the Year and Product of the Year for the Ennies last year, and I still couldn't find anybody. Like, it took me weeks to find people, and I was like, oh my god! And they posted on Roll20. I went on the official Discord. I went, I think, on Reddit and looked for people. So I've used a multiple of different outlets to find these folks, and I've been really lucky. And I found like my Sunday group is the group I put together when I started this channel, and they are a solid group of guys who are willing to try any game. These are the guys who are like, kill me, I don't care. One guy's like, please kill me. I work with him, and every day, like at work, you like roll his chair around we sit back to back, roll his chair around the cubicle, and be like, hey, kill me Sunday. I really don't care. And once there's people die, like, just kill him. On stream, we're like, no, I'm not gonna kill you. But like, I've been really lucky finding these guys. But I found them all randomly online. I've only had one dud so far. And that's a risky take, especially when we're running streams, right? And
oh yeah.
Like, this guy, he said some inappropriate things, did some inappropriate things with an NPC at the time, and I was kind of like, huh?
Red flags started going up, huh?
Yeah, and it kind of took me by surprise. And another one of the guys in the game, he's like a veteran DM. He's been running forever. He has his own podcast, and he kind of picked up on this, and he just jumped in, and he would like transition and move it along. And I was like, thank God for you. You're amazing. Because I went back and watched the stream afterwards, and I'm like, I'm not comfortable with this. And I actually edited these little clips out and took them out. And I ended up telling the player afterwards, like, hey, man, you're not a good fit and this and that, and kicking him out and everything.
That's a hard conversation, isn't it?
It was. It was a hard conversation. I also had to put rules on my Discord also. Like, guys, like, this stuff is not acceptable. Things that you'd think unspoken, right? You shouldn't do.
The internet is dark and full of terrors.
Yeah.
It's so bad out there. Like, I had no idea until like we started doing this online. Like, we've been very sheltered, I guess, somewhat as gamers. Like me and Jeff in our group here, like, we've been playing with the same DM for 20 years. Like, you look down there at our banners down there, it's like we've been playing in Limworld since like 94.
Yeah.
like it's same, like, we DM for each other, rotate around, a few other people have come and gone over time. But like, when you think about it, like, we never have any of these problems. These things are unheard of for us. Our biggest problem was people finding out we were gamers back then.
Yeah, right.
That was the biggest problem back then, right?
That was
like, oh man. Thing. So that's a whole nother topic for a whole other wisdom check.
Yes.
But so that was like the biggest problem we had back then. We never thought about things like having to kick one of us out of a group, like middle of a game, like, because the things they were doing or this at the other. Like, it never occurred to us, like. So we get online, right? And I'm the guy, like I said, who does a lot of the Twitter action out there. So I'm like flipping through Twitter and, I'm adding people. I think we follow like 700 people now or something. And I'm flipping through there. And it's amazing just watching what apparently goes on in D&D communities out there. Like, I had no idea. So the fact that you've had only one picking people up online essentially to play seems like incredible odds, like that you've overcome there.
Yeah. No, it is lucky. You're not wrong. And it's hard to vet these people too, right? Beforehand.
Yeah.
Like, you have to take a chance.
Yeah. If you want new players, you have to.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Nature of all things. Yeah.
I was starved for play. It was Forbidden Lands. It was our first session of Forbidden Lands, and I was like, guys, I want to run this. I need people, right? So I got my 5th, and I went with it. And I'm also happy I edited that video with the 2 like questionable clips out, because it ended up being my most watched video on my YouTube channel. I was like,
you think it would have turned people away?
I think some people would have questioned, like,
you don't have to go into any details, but it was something that you were concerned would turn people away from it.
It was just inappropriate behavior and things like that they did in game with NPCs, and it was a hard decision also, right, afterwards, because like I thought about it for a while. I was like, I wasn't comfortable with how that played out, and it kind of took me back. I went back and watched the footage, and I was kind of like, huh? Like, on screen, you can be like, I'm like, what did you do? And then the other guy kind of jumped in and filled the gap and like just moved it along instead of making it something. So it was a tough decision. But I'm happy I did it.
You were fortunate you weren't live.
Yeah. It was live. I don't think anyone was watching at the time. I went back. I yanked it off of Twitch afterwards. I think right after we played, and then threw it in editing software, cut the 2 clips out, put it back on Twitch, and then upload it to YouTube as well.
Okay, so it was live at the time. I thought you were saying you had it like you had recorded it and then cut it out when you went to post it on YouTube.
No,
you were actually live on Twitch at the time.
It was live. I don't think anybody's watching us though.
You were
Small miracles.
Yeah, right.
That time you're glad you don't have viewership, right? You're like, oh man, that was a close one.
See, I only had one of these weird times. That was LARP. I had to kick some players out for they decided to play like Nazi characters and like they weren't like hinting at it. They were going like in super racist stuff. And I was like, all right, you guys are done.
Yeah.
Dude literally tried to fight me.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I literally had a dude threaten me at our game. Like, had to call the cops.
Well, that's the thing. You're not here to facilitate their weird fantasy. And that's kind of what I said about this guy also, because the player's like, what happened? I'm like, I'm not going to get into it. I'm not going to tell you guys, but I'm not here to facilitate your weird fantasies. That's not why I run games.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the end kind of thing.
It was really tricky with LARP because, and this is just for this particular LARP that me and him were involved in, it was a campus student organization.
Mm-hmm.
So as a campus student organization, you have a lot of you can't discriminate rules.
Oh, okay.
So you can use those to your benefit to remove somebody from a game for doing derogatory type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But you also have to be careful because then they can go right back over there and be like, well, they're discriminating against me because I have X or Y beliefs. And you're like, damn it. Like, so we were fortunate it didn't come to that. But I mean, if you're in those kind of situations, you got to know what you're dealing with too, because it can come back and bite you the other way around. So.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of topics we could probably dig into. But this one's already running its course, I think.
I think so.
Our time that we're looking at. So
let's go ahead here and let Matt tell everyone out there where they can find him once again.
Sorry, my audio cut out there, so just jump back in.
We were going to have you go ahead and just say once again where they can find you at when you're playing, what you're playing.
For sure. Yeah, so Jowzam's Den on both Twitch and YouTube. We're playing D&D 5e tomorrow night. I don't DM that one. I'm a player in it, so we have a guest DM who runs that. So that's Tuesday nights at 8 to 11 Mountain Standard Time. Every Friday night is the ongoing Forbidden Lands game, and that's 9 to midnight Mountain Standard Time. And then Sunday is our rotating game. So right now it's Cosmic Solar Blades, Cosmic Spells. We're running that for the next few weeks straight, and then I'm going to have the designer on afterwards to talk about the game. But starting the 26th, we're going to start alternating on Sunday nights between a random game that we're going to do for 3 to 5 sessions and the Masks of Nyarlathotep, which is going to run for, I'm told people who have run this campaign before, it's like a year plus. Like, it's huge, it's long.
Ooh, nice.
Would that be your longest campaign?
Yeah, it will be.
Awesome.
It's many investigators are going to die and go insane. That's one guarantee of this campaign.
You're sitting amongst marathon runners, so you want to graduate up from the 5Ks and half marathons to the marathons like we're used to. Like, well, it'll be interesting to watch you go through that. Your first time.
Yeah, no, welcome you guys to come in and join. It's gonna be a wild ride. But
absolutely, I plan on checking you out. It sounds like you got so much cool stuff going on over there. I love to see new games, and it sounds like you got cool guests coming on there. And I just really appreciate you coming on, having this conversation. Had a really good time with it. It's wonderful.
I appreciate you guys asking me on. This has been awesome. It's been
absolutely.
So, Jeff, why don't you go ahead and tell everyone out there where they can find you? And then
sure.
I'll finish it.
Yeah, I do some Let's Plays of video games at Rain Survives on YouTube. So primarily right at the moment, I'm playing Ark Survival on a kind of unofficial server. And in the past, I've done stuff like Fallout 4 Frost. I typically play games on like really absurd difficulty levels. And, I like to show the first time I played a game, just show you, the hard stuff. It's a lot of fun. So if you like making fun of people just getting butchered and then eventually triumphing in the end, Jeff, definitely check me out.
And I am Dustin. I am the player of Bower and Harrows. You can find me here on TT2KB, where we play in the Everstorm game. Our next game is May 25th, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
It is going to be a different game than what you're used to seeing here a little bit, because our DM is coming down here to visit me and Clint. And so we're working on what our setup's going to look up for that night. So it's going to look a little different. Maybe look a little more like the live game. So it'll be a little interesting to see how that goes. You can also find me at Plague State on Twitch and on Twitter. I am the guy who also runs the TT2KB Twitter, things like that. So if you're out there talking to them, you're most likely talking to me. On Plague State, Plague's my online gaming guild, repping the merch today. So you'll find me on there as Gladius Rex, where I'm known throughout the MMO community as, well, a relatively well-known PvPer.
For sure, you're just known as a terrorist, right?
Yeah. The game Arcage that I'm currently playing when I do stream, it gives you everything you ever wanted to make another Life's player hell. And let's just say that over the course of 5 years, I've utilized every one of those tools to its max benefit, and some tools that they didn't anticipate being used for such things. But
So you're enjoying it.
Yeah. Well, I'm in year 5. You don't get to year 5 without enjoying it somewhat.
It's in his nature.
I do have a few other announcements here involving the Wisdom Check.
Awesome.
I have been very busy over the last week booking guests, obviously. Talked to Matt here. We got him here today. Next week, I am happy to announce that our guest is going to be Stonefly KY from Dadbod D&D. She is going to be on the show. She kind of has a special distinction here at TT2KB as being like our first fan. When we started streaming Everstorm, she was one of the first ones that started watching us regularly. And so I did reach out to her, and she has agreed to come on next week. The following week, we're going to have Naravia from Naravia TV on here. She's a new streamer. Well, she's not a new streamer. She's been streaming for a while, but a new player for Dungeons & Dragons. Just started a Curse of Strahd campaign that she's playing in. So we're going to talk to both of them over the next couple of weeks. And then following week after that, Chuck from Defenders of Kobold. He'll be here.
My man Chuck.
Your man Chuck will be here. So that's your next 4 weeks worth of guests that I have lined up so far for the Wisdom Check. So
yeah, and I believe we are going weekly, right?
We are going weekly.
So every Monday night.
So there's more of them out there I'm going to be talking to and getting booked as we go forward. So we're glad to have you here. Maybe we'll even have you come back sometime in the future, and we'll talk some more game in the future.
I would be happy to come back. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, please do. Thank you.
It's been great.
And thank you all the fans. We'll see you next Monday. Ta-ta.
Peace.